Okay, so the other type of semantics is the small step semantics. So the idea with the small step semantics is we want to be able to reason about intermediate states, right? So I mentioned the analogy with the debugger. We want to be able to see in the middle where are we and what is left to execute. We also want possibly to express properties like non-termination in a more precise fashion. So previously with the big step semantics, when you have a transition, predicate, a judgment, that judgment tells you basically it is possible to go from that configuration to that state. But it doesn't mean that it is necessary unless you've proved determinism as well. So you could have a program that sometimes terminates and sometimes doesn't terminate, and you could still have the judgment that says yes, you can reach a final state. It doesn't mean the program terminate, unless again it's determinism and this is the only possible thing it could do. So with the small step semantics, we'll have the power to express these things in a kind of more fine manner. This will also this can also help us with multi-threading, right? Where you have multiple threads making all of them their little small steps, and then you need to interleave them, right? Because they're running with the same shared memory. So you do one step here, one step there, you have a race condition here. So with the big step semantics, you cannot capture these things. You cannot capture race conditions and whatnot. You just have one thread running and then the other thread running, but you cannot interleave them. So small step also has that advantage. So the judgments have a different shape. So we now have, why is it? I have no idea why this is popping up now. Go away, go away. It's right. I'll stop pointing there. I'll point okay, I'll just I'll just not point it out. So the judgment has the form. You see, you have a pair on both sides, and I call the a pair configuration. So you have a configuration going to a configuration. Now we have a much smaller arrow than before because this is small step semantics. And the idea is that you just do one step of the program. So the program big T is the rest of the program that remains to be executed, and the state little t is the new state after doing one instruction in some sense. So if you know how programs actually run in memory in a computer, then you just have like the program is completely loaded, and you have the program counter that advances. If there's maybe a jump, and then it continues, and then a loop, it goes back. But the program counter tells you where you are in the program. You also see it with the debuggers, for example. Well, here's a bit the same thing, but we don't have a program counter. What we do is we modify the program, right? So as we advance to the program, we just remove what we've executed, right? And when we enter a loop, then we copy the body of the loop at the end as many times as we need, as we unfold the program and so on. But basically it's the same. It's just a different representation of the same idea, which is that you have a kind of representation of what you've already executed or that you don't really care about. You can throw it away if you want, but especially have a representation of what remains to be done. And that is the big T here. So the judgment is meant to be read in this way. So starting in a state little s, executing one step of big S, leaves us in the state little t, with the program t remaining to be executed, right? So that's what you continue with. And then an execution is going to be a chain, of configurations like this. The 0th one, so the first one, the second one, ... It might be finite. You might end up, terminating. It might be infinite. So yeah, I already introduced the notion of configuration. We'll say that a configuration is final if no transition is possible. So you cannot leave that configuration using the small step semantics. And here's an example where we have 3 transitions and the third one leaves us in a final state. And you see it's our example from above, but above we did it informally. We hadn't even seen the rules of the game, and now we have the rules, so we can apply them. So you see, first we execute the first statement and replace it by skip. Then we remove skip and the semicolon. Then we execute the second assignment and replace it by skip. And then we get stuck. So when we have a program that is only skip, then we take it as meaning, okay, there's nothing left to do, we are done. That's how we interpret it. So skip here is a bit special, it's a bit different from before. So the first skip here we remove because it was on the left side of composition, right? So sequential composition. And then it was blocking, you know, the rest of the execution. So at the point we remove not only skip, but also the semicolon. So there we want to get rid of skip. But at the end, it's a useful marker to say we're done. So now these are the rules. So you see, these are a different set of rules from above, and you should not confuse the small step and the big step, right? So if at the exam, we ask, please specify a big step semantics for such and such, please do a big step, not a small step, or not a mixture, or keep those two concepts, you know, very cleanly separated in your mind, because they're similar but different, right? So same but different, as they say in China. So let's see how that goes. So we have the assignment rule. The assignment rule is quite similar to before. We just have to plug in a skip once we're done running the assignment. I wonder what triggers that window. It's really a mystery to me. Maybe now it's, no, it's not better. Simp only, why simp? Okay, sorry. So far so good, right? I mean, executing a simple statement like assignment is more or less just like before, and once you're done, you say skip to say you're done. Here for sequential composition, the idea is that you execute the first program, right? So to execute this program here, you need to execute the first program, and you know that leaves you with a new program S prime and a new state S prime, and then later you can continue with that. All right, so you've just made one step, and you've made that step in the first program. But you see there's recursion here. I mean, you basically say, if you can take a step with S and big S, little s, then you can add the context, you know, the T here and the T here, and that will just work the same. So the same transition is possible also in context, but only on the left-hand side, because you want to execute the left-hand side before the right-hand side. And at the end, once you've reached skip, semicolon, you can just eliminate it. So that's a very small step, but it's still a step now. I mean, we're really doing things in a small step fashion, right? Tiny baby steps. So if then else is quite cute, because you have this whole if then else thing, and your step is basically just to decide whether you go left or right, whether you take S or S prime, and basically check the condition for that. And here, I mean, the condition is true, then we take S, otherwise you take S prime, and notice that the state hasn't changed, right? So we went from S to S. What has changed is the program. We've eliminated, you know, everything we don't need anymore. We've just chosen the branch that we need. And the while is even cuter, because if that thing goes away, basically we expand the whole while to an if, and then inside of it there's a sequential composition and another while, right? So we say, well, a while like this is basically you unroll it once, right? You basically say, well, let's do an if first, right? If the condition is true, then you want to run S, and then you want to run the while again, which will again expand into an if, into the condition, into the while again, which should again expand. So in the end, a while is really just a bunch of ifs and sequential compositions that may go to infinity in some sense. And this rule embodies that. So you see, it's a very easy rule with no premises. And in fact, most rules, all of them actually except the sixth step, so the second one, have no premises. So that means they'll be quite convenient to apply. It's just that we'll have to apply all these small steps to get anywhere, right? We have the while, we get the if. From the if, we have to choose the branch. Then you have sequential composition. There you have the premise. So I mean, it's basically the law of preservation of ugliness is what some people call it. I mean, you know, what you don't pay upfront, you have to pay later, basically. And notice that there is no rule for skip. Why? Well, I'm not going to answer all questions all the time. So this one I will take at the Q&A if anybody wonders. But it's an important question. Why is there no rule for skip? Or what would the rule for skip look like if there would be a rule for skip? And what would be the consequences? So this is the lean specification, again, of the rules. And this is really just a straightforward adaptation of what we saw upstairs. So I'm not going to go through this, right? It's just the same translation we did when we defined the big step semantics earlier. And then we also have some infix syntax. So there's a small one here, small arrow, and small arrow star is the transitive closure. You might remember from lecture 5, star of the small step semantics. Where this star here, although it's called the same and has the same semantics as the one in lecture 5, is defined in lovelib, and it's defined differently. I mean, you get the same result, but it's just a different definition that has only 2 cases instead of 3, which is convenient. I mean, when you do reasoning, you have often one less case to deal with, but it's less intuitive. It's going to appear in the theory file, but not you're not going to have to interact with this operator yourself. It's just I'm going to present a bit of extra material that relies on it, and it's I mean, it's a useful concept, but it's a bit tricky to I mean reason both about the reflexive transitive closure and about the small step semantics at the same time. So we're not going to do that in this course. And one side effect of having defined a small step semantics is that we could have defined a big step semantics in terms of the small step, right? Not the other way around. And the trick is simply you say that you can define the big step as if and only if, and then you have this star transition here and skip, right? So if you reach skip, which means you're done, you know, that means you know, that you've executed the whole program, which amounts to a big step, right? What we could also do is to prove the 2 equivalent, and in fact, there is a proof at the bottom of the file, but we're not going to cover it in class. It's just you know, extra material to show you that we can prove non-trivial properties about these things, and just to give you a feel for what, you know, proofs look like, more complicated proofs than those we have the time to cover in class, what they look like. Okay, and then there are of course merits to small step and big steps, and I mean the small step is you know, requires you to invoke more rules after another, as I've explained, and also you have these 2 relations and transitive closure, which is a bit tedious. All right.